Black Adam reportedly losing massive amounts of money. So
why does it make me happy?
Why does it make you happy? Let's ask that question
I
first.
don't know. I asked you the question earlier if you thought there were some people rooting for the failure of Black Adam, and you said it would only be the critics that love Disney and Marvel
It feels like
that
Disney
would
shills
root
would
for
love.
it to fail.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I just think that this is a vehicle for The Rock, and they were stupid to think he'd be the main draw.
Well, here, okay. So first, I'm going to do the numbers first because that's the part I hate the most. So, basically, what we have here is the budgets for both Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Black Adam. For Black Adam, the number was totaled out to be 195 million. If you take the budgetary technique of 1.5 times that budget for marketing, you get a $292.5 million budget. If you times that by 2, that's $585 million. That's your break even.
This is the craziest word problem of all time.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like hard to pay attention.
And then we get
to that.
Wakanda Forever, which is a budget of $250 million. Same principle applies. That is a $375 million budget with marketing all in, which means it needs $750 million just to break even at the theaters. Sitting currently right now, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is almost about to break even. It just passed, what was it, $733 million. So it's getting close to that point. Black Adam is only sitting at $384 million. And then they're saying like, well, that
Warner Brothers is coping hard because
they said the budget
Variety claimed that they would need to break even at $600 million, and then Warner Brothers responded saying that they only need $400 million,
which is not
a
possible.
huge difference.
Then they
and
made
it
up a
seems
number.
like a big cope.
They made a number. They're like, oh, it was only $80 million marketing budget. I'm like, no, it was. No, it was not. Like, you're just coping hard right now. And the other thing about this is this was the worst Thanksgiving box office in history this past weekend.
Why is that, do you think?
Think about this. COVID happened. 2021 after COVID happened.
I mean,
they say
2020 COVID happened.
That's what I'm saying. 2020
also.
COVID happened. One thing is I didn't know if they counted 2020 COVID in there, so I left that out of the numbers.
Exception.
But in 1994, they said the worst Thanksgiving box office in history, but the last time the box office was that low was Thanksgiving of 1994. It only made $94.5 million, but adjusted for inflation, that's like way more than what what you're making now. And it's like, I have to ask this question. Look, everyone here has worked in different fields in their life. Hannah Claire as a journalist, other fields, Carter working in music, others. Can you think of any other industry where you're routinely allowed to just take $250 million gambles, miss almost every time, and still get to keep doing it?
The stock market.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not that I've worked in, but
I feel like there are a bunch of guys on Wall Street who are like, yeah, don't do that. That's terrible. But they definitely do it all the time. I mean, I think part of it is, and I've pitched this before, some of these big production houses or studios or whatever, I have this theory that they're all doing it for a tax write-off, right? Like, if it's a business expenditure, you can write it off. So, like, Amazon, what was the one that they just did?
Rings of Power.
Rings of Power. Like, I fundamentally believe that they were like, it doesn't need to make money because we're going to balance this out in the bottom line. Right?
I thought the same thing, but I would have to have somebody explain to me. Like, I actually looked that question up. I was like, is there a way that they write it off in their taxes? Maybe that's true, but it's the producers, not just the production company that loses the money, right? These movies aren't funded by just Warner Brothers. They're funded by individual producers in that project. Now, you could make the argument that they made $40 million back in at-home sales for Black Adam, but you're still nowhere near that break-even point. Merch, maybe. I see people wearing Marvel clothes in merch. I don't see people wearing a whole lot of DC stuff outside of maybe Batman.
My thought basically is, and I'm not an accountant, so please don't take this as an actual analysis, but like if you report a loss, right? If you're making an income and then the next year you make less, your taxes change. You possibly pay less in taxes. So I assume there are producers who would benefit from not always having hit after hit after hit after hit.
I have it written down here. It's like, is it written off as losses or do the producers make it up elsewhere? Whether that's through deals for future projects, things like that. But also, is there a way in the music industry that somebody could possibly lose them that much money? Because don't they have to pay back advances if they don't?
I mean, yeah.
Like if a book doesn't do well, right? Like if a writer gets an advance on their next book and the book doesn't do well, they still have to pay back that advance if it doesn't cover the cost of that advance.
Yeah,
well,
it's not just
the
free.
excuse that's coming from DC and specifically from The Rock is that it doesn't matter whether this is a huge hit or not. They're using the first Black Adam cinematic release to build the brand, to build the beginnings of the next 10 years for DC. So it's serving more of a purpose for the longer story arc than it is in its own right. But still, that seems like a cope, because The Rock was supposed to be the big draw for getting butts in seats for this film, but The Rock has never, as the main star of a movie, gotten one to gross over $500 million.
Which is funny because he was the highest paid actor in the world.
He's like, you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
It's also funny because I'm looking at, like, I'm thinking specifically from a cost benefit analysis. If I'm the studio, right, and they come to me and they say, we want to make this movie. If I'm Warner Brothers and the DC executives say, we want to make this movie, or I'm Disney and Marvel executives say, we want to make this movie, and Black Adam has The Rock, who is a known actor, but Black Adam, which is admittedly to most normies a far less understood or known character, and you have Black Panther, which is a known character now, but no longer has Chadwick Boseman, who is the known actor. Yeah. Both of them have like huge things in the negative working against the idea that they're
huge
going to
voids.
that they're going to make their money.
It's very cocky that they would give the Black Panther sequel a larger budget than the original.
I know, right?
$250 million. That's outlandish.
It's
not like they're not going to make a profit, right? But even if they make it close to 800 million, they're going to make a profit, but it's still way underperforming its predecessor and should not have had a greater budget than the last one. It should have a significantly lower budget.
And I understand projects that don't pay out right away, right? You build on something that pays out further down the line, but that's such a large, maybe it's just the amount of money to me that is shocking. Like, it's one thing to invest in something small and work towards it building a profit that will have longevity or work long term, but that's not really how it tends to work in this type of media, right? Like, once ad revenue starts drying up for network television shows, they start getting shorter and shorter seasons and then finally axed. I can't imagine a world where I could work any job where I would be paid that well and then expected to not have any type of deal on the back end. Now, also, does this change the power dynamic? Mary, we talk about this every day. With James Gunn now in control over there, and him and The Rock not really communicating
allegedly being on the outs.
Does this change the power dynamic? It would have given The Rock a lot more power within the company if he was able to say, look, I came in, I made the company this much money. You need to understand that I know what I'm doing. Let me make my movies the way I want. James Gunn can be like, look, my last movie, The Suicide Squad, didn't make any money. Your last movie didn't really make much money. But at least my Guardians of the Galaxy movies are always profitable and make money, and people love those.
Yeah, and another iteration of that series is on the way.
Yeah.
But it even seemed that The Rock was gunning, no pun intended, for James Gunn's current role, and he didn't get that. He was hoping to get a top spot in this so-called hierarchy of the DCU, and here's exactly what he said. We established Black Adam around the world as the most powerful and dominant, unstoppable force in the DCU. That is a fact. And we established the Justice Society around the world too. Keep in mind, if you were not a hardcore comic book fan, no one heard of Black Adam or the Justice Society. The hardcore comic book fans, we get your love, your loyalty, and I appreciate that to the bone. The rest of the world had no idea who Black Adam was, so we're establishing the brand. And that didn't work out thus far.
Carter, have you seen Black Adam?
No, and honestly, that may be the only thing they have as an excuse, because I pulled this up and I'm like, what is Black Adam?
It's big talk, but where is the money to back it up?
I also want to point out that for stuff like this, it doesn't really matter. The one thing comic book fans hate is when they start shilling a character as the most powerful this or that. They hate that. Most people who love these characters don't want to hear about how Captain Marvel is supposedly the most powerful character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because everyone knows that there's an agenda behind it.
Because it means that the actor or actress's ego is wrapped up in the character they're playing.
Well, when the journalists do it, it's because they want to say, take that, you man babies.
Right.
Take that, you incels.
Well, even in The Rock's case, it seems like his ego was majorly wrapped up in this role, and then it didn't have anything to say for itself.
I feel like they're limited to The Rock fans, because I'd rather see the movie with anybody but him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do
I
you
don't
dislike-
really
Wait, so
I mean,
you like Avatar?
Do you
but
dislike him
don't like
because
The Rock.
he's juicing?
Okay.
No, I mean, he's been around forever, and I've formed my opinion over the last 2 decades of The Rock, and it's like, I'm not going to go see a movie because of him.
To be fair, he was way more awesome as a wrestler when he was just a jerk to everyone.
Well, and for this, it's 2 for 2, right? So you don't really care about The Rock, and you don't know what this is. So why would you go
Right.
see it?
Yeah.
Like,
Certainly not going to see the sequel and see it twice.
but you
Like,
either need to get on this universe now,
Right.
or you're out. And I feel like that's the strange gamble that they're taking. Like, I have never seen Black Adam. I have no opinion of The Rock. I wouldn't go see this movie. I don't know who they're marketing to. I don't know if they think that, like, by introducing a new element of this universe, they're able to pick up, like,
Thank you.
teenage fans who will grow up with it and then be obsessed with it forever. Like,
Right.
No, that's
this
not the
doesn't-
audience. It's
He's looking for
middle-aged men.
hardcore
It's-
fans.
It's middle-aged men.
And then they
Are
want
there
to
enough
elevate
of
the
them?
character
Yes,
of
there
Black
are.
Adam off of the coattails of Henry Cavill's Superman,
Yeah.
which is he got the cameo that lasted like 10 seconds at the end of the movie, which is such a cheap trick in my opinion.
And the more I think about it, like all the good movies we saw, like most of the movies I liked this year were not like I liked Black Adam, but not as much as I liked some of the other movies we watched this year.
I didn't like it at all,
yeah.
and I
You-
wasn't surprised that the critics gave it 39%.
I'm
Are
surprised.
you guys
by
going to
it.
do your end of year roundup of, like, favorite stuff you saw this year?
We could do that, but it's like, thank you. That was weird sounding. That's one of those things where I'll like forget everything that we saw possibly. Like, and plus I already know the answer. It's the television show Reacher was my favorite thing that I saw this whole year. Everything else
I can
is
tell
like-
you right now.
But it just feels like for all of these things, like you have this built-in demographic, and they're not finding a way to reach it for them. Marvel's making money, but still, they're going to break 800 million. The last one made 1.3 billion. Like,
Yeah, and domestically, the
inflation?
first Black Panther made close to what this one is going to make
Yeah.
overall.
yeah.
And then when you look at that, the budget for the sequel is just inexcusable, and they really need to have eyes commensurate with their stomachs. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like it would be good if like these studios tried like a process of humility where it's like, we'll give you the money to make this movie, but we're only going to give you so much, but it's up to you to make it work?
I feel like we're missing the point, which is that, like, these studios are essentially functioning the way globalist society does. Like, they don't need to budget based
Yeah.
on one movie. Like, I don't need to independently make the money off of my movie back if I know that ultimately we're in this collectively and you'll make enough money somewhere else to balance out the losses, right? Which in some ways I could see it being an argument for, like, that's empowering to artists and potential directors, right? They can take risks
Yeah.
and know that, like, they aren't going to be pummeled by the studio for not making back the money. On the other hand, like, the people they're allowed, or like the projects that they're willing to take these risks on, are stuff to me that are not interesting. And I know it's easy for me to say, like, I'm not interested in Black Adam because I've never been interested in any of this.
Yeah.
Like, I'll go to a superhero movie if, like, we're all going as a group, but
Right.
like, I am not independently counting down the days until the
Right.
Black Adam sequel comes out. Like, I'm just not. And so to me, like, ultimately wondering whether or not they should readjust their budget is sort of pointless because they have moved past that. Like, they don't care about that. Their budget is structured based on the holistic growth of all of their projects.
I don't agree because they made $1 billion with Joker on a $50 million budget. I'm saying you can release more material.
I'm saying you
and-
can,
yeah.
and some stuff that you spend money on could do well, but ultimately they don't need to calculate, like, well, we'll set your budget based on how much we actually think you're going to make. Like, they can set it on whatever they want because they are looking at the holistic health of their business.
They've moved beyond the need for genuine enthusiasm for any of their singular projects.
I don't know if I agree with that because if there's one thing Zaslav seems to be pushing, it's that we need need movie theaters, not that we need streaming services.
But movie theaters for what?
Okay, so the idea here is like, what if you need the theaters? You need something. You're tied to at least one medium. Release more into that medium that year on smaller budgets.
But this is where I think the superhero universe wins because it's like, well, you have to see it with the surround sound and you need this experience, whatever. Like, you could produce a ton of movies to direct to streaming or to whatever else, and those will help generate a profit for you. But if you feel like you need movie theaters, which I'm not sure actually all the studios really do, there's only a certain type of movie that people really feel tied to seeing it in that environment. Does that make sense?
They likened
Avatar.
They likened
okay.
it to.
So that's coming up again.
He likened it to streaming to the .com bust, right? That they're chasing subscriber counts that don't honestly mean anything because
they've evolved past the need for
Yeah.
profits,
Yeah.
but not for long, hopefully. And I did see this tweet that presents something of a silver lining opportunity that we could Morbius Black Adam.
And re-release
They
it?
said, what you're saying is we have the opportunity to do the funniest thing ever, gaslight another Hollywood studio into re-releasing a movie nobody cares about by pretending that we promised to actually see it this time.
I don't think it would work with them. I think
The meme magic is lost.
I think Zaslav is smarter than the people in charge at Sony. Like Sony is kind of like it feels like with Spider-Man No Way Home is like what does Tim always say? Donald Trump slipping on a banana peel and doing a backflip.
doing a perfect
They're like
backflip.
they accidentally do something really, really smart every once in a while. But that's how I feel about most of these studios. Is like every time you think they're listening to you, they're not. They just got lucky. Like it actually is just them lucking into a good decision every once in a while. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I'm just saying that maybe it's because we're so tied to talking about this stuff all the time. But I would like to see them dare to try to do these things on a smaller budget, limit the amount of CGI, and create more meaningful stories. And I feel like there's a market for that. If your idea is that purely business, globalist or not, the idea that there's story ideas that can be fulfilled because people want good stories, I don't see how that's any different.
As you know, I'm totally with you. I think we all should demand better storytelling from the movie executives, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think they do a terrible job. I don't understand how we could already be planning to have 4 or 5 Black Adams or
I mean,
5
the Rock
Avatars.
is already 50 years old.
Like, what
It's
is
gonna
this?
be like-
This is a ridiculous
Yeah.
plan.
Also,
but
it's,
I will say that the same way that you tell me we get 10 Fast and the Furious because they make money, like if you are not operating on a profit-driven scale, they don't need to listen to the audience, right? Like if the audience banded together and was like, we want better stories with less CGI, the studio is not bound to you at all because they are still making money.
Yeah.
They need the audience. Like we talk about this, like the only way to vote is with your dollar, right? Like if you wanted different types of products, you would need to seek them out and put money towards them, and then maybe the studio would listen. But ultimately, like, it's such a weird, I'm in a cynical mood today, but like it's in such a like overarching interwoven business that like you don't get to vote. I wish you did. Then I would stop having sequels, right? I would
Yeah.
single-handedly lead the charge against 3, 4s, and 5s in these series. But like ultimately, your money's coming in already. They don't need you.
I don't know if I like
Because
shows
you're too much of an optimist and a
shows-
capitalist to admit that we can't vote with our dollar
shows
anymore.
get canceled all the time for not doing well. Like they get canceled quietly.
Shows maybe,
Yeah.
but not theatrical release
They
movies.
canceled Batgirl. I guess that was an HBO Max release. So yeah.
Owned, debunked.
Well, I debunked
live on air.
I
You
debunked
just
myself. So
You
it
just
doesn't
got
count.
owned, son.
It doesn't count because I owned myself.
No, he's right. He owned himself.
I'm proud of you. I feel like
Since
that's
nobody, well, I didn't even own myself. I corrected myself.
Right, he
which means I
retracted
wasn't-
before
Yeah,
Okay,
so take
okay.
that, you incels. That's
Wow.
it.
Thanks,
Right.
PR team.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.